Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. On today's show, I have the pleasure of being joined by Jon Belmonte. Jon is the CEO of AutoVitals and has a great background in technology. For our conversation today, we're going to be discussing the changing technology in shops and what we can do to take full advantage of new technology, even as it is at times hard to be able to incorporate and adapt to. But he'll have a lot of really, really good insight. Welcome to the show, Jon. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Jay. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I've been excited about this interview and getting to know you a little bit better. I've known about AutoVitals for quite some time, but for those of our audience that don't know who AutoVitals is, can you give us a little background on the company, what it is, and kind of how it's gotten to where it's at?
Sure. Yeah. So AutoVitals has been around for, about a dozen years at this point. And, our founder, Uwe Kleinschmidt, who you may know and most people in the industry know, and is just a true product and market genius. He recognized, 10, 12 years ago that there was a gap in the market, that there was a lot of great technology out there, particularly focused around what was at the time called point of sales, or maybe now more called a shop management system. But those software systems really did a nice job of helping you run some of the day-to-day of the business. It was, really great to get your parts ordered and inventoried, or, pay your people, or just, kind of keep the lights on. But what he recognized was, in order to sort of meet a shop owner or shop employees, all their kind of professional goals, it was really going to be necessary to have a different type of software, an additional type of software that, he really started the business focused on helping shops bring more clients in. So when Google got popular, he wanted to make sure that it was that shops were able to take advantage of people looking online for things in their area. And then shops came to him and came to the company and said, "That's great, you're getting me a lot more customers, but I want to do a better job of presenting the jobs and helping sell them work." And he invented something called digital vehicle inspection, and that's not only a big part of our business today, but is a big part of a lot of shops day-to-days, and lots of software companies include that as well. And then, not surprisingly, these shops and shop owners and employees came back and said, "All right, well, you got us a ton of new customers and we're selling them a ton of work, but now we're too busy. Like, what are we going to do?" Right? Like, every shop owner knows this problem at one time or another. Like, our hair's on fire. People are running, the service advisor is running the back and talking to technicians, and technicians coming up and asking questions. What do I work on next? Really inefficient. So he built what I would say is probably the most differentiating part of our solution today, which is this kind of workflow solution. We call it SmartFlow X, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it really helps a shop be able to get a ton more work done that much more efficiently. Same number of bays, same number of technicians, which those are two things that are, as you know, really tough to expand on and increase, but just generally make the business run a ton better. So, and that's what technology is good for.
It's funny you say that about Uwe. I think the first time I ever met him, I was like blown away at how stupid I felt being around him. And he's just an incredibly smart person.
Yeah, really. And just, it's funny. One of the ways I describe our company, and the way I describe like why customers work with us, and a lot of it really does go back to Uwe and the culture he set, which is, we're not box checkers, and our clients generally aren't box checkers, right? And what I mean by that is, a lot of times shops know, like, oh, I should be doing this. I should have this best practice, or I should be having these kind of meetings, or talking about these kind of things with my employees, or I should be providing this to my customers. And sometimes they'll do it, but they'll do it in a way where it's like they're just checking the box, right? Like they're just saying, like, "Oh, I offer this, or I do this, but I'm just doing it in name kind of only." And man, I've never met a person who is more of an anti-box checker than Uwe. right? I mean, he's a guy who, I talk so much about him because it's such a big part of our culture in terms of, and the company culture in terms of, like when we do it and when he did anything, like we go to the nth degree. We really want to understand what's going on with the client. How can we help clients? Oh, that seems like it's still inefficient. We got to keep pushing on that. We got to keep pushing the boundaries on it. And so, yeah, it's important.
When I say that he made me feel stupid, it wasn't because of his doing. He couldn't have been a more kind individual. The
Right.
multiple times that I've met him, it's just that when you talk to him, you just you
On a
just
different
know
level.
it's that feeling that you're
Yeah.
around something special, right? And
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the ultimate compliment to somebody. Now, how about you? I mean, in doing research about your background, it is fascinating. A lot of technology background in general, but what led you to AutoVitals?
Yeah. So, about 4 years ago, I was working with some investors, and we were talking to a bunch of different companies, looking at a bunch of different industries, and we met Uwe and we met his investors, and I think what we realized, and what I realized was a couple of things. We realized that automotive is a big market, a huge market, and exciting for a variety of reasons. One is that you know, repair shops and repair shop owners 4 or 5 years ago were still pretty early in terms of adopting technology. And in a lot of cases, they're still pretty early, right? And it's exciting to be in a market where sometimes you're selling against pen and paper, right? Like when we call up, or you're selling against something that's pretty rudimentary, or maybe the shop just doesn't do particularly at that time, right? Like, does a shop really use a CRM, a customer relationship management tool, to like contact its customers and bring more people in, or are they just making phone calls and sending out mailers? There's nothing wrong with those. Those are actually tried and true tactics that most shops should continue to do, but you're missing out if you're not using like real technology to do it. And so it wasn't really just a matter of upselling people from one technology to new. It was like really getting them to start using things. And that's kind of an exciting challenge. I think the other thing that we realized was, again, there's this big gap. There was this big gap in terms of, um, you know, uh, um, point of sales or shop management systems, great at what they do. Like, again, can't I make this dumb comment or joke, which is you can't run a shop without a building. You can't really run a shop without a shop management system either, right?
Not anymore.
But but generally shop management is really great at some things, and then we're really great at some things. And that was an exciting challenge to be able to come in and say like, hey, we've built and are building this whole other category called shop success solutions, and that you want your doors open, you got to have shop management. If you want to like really reach all your profitability goals, or open multiple shops, or be able to pass your business along to your kids as well as you want, like you really need that shop success solution. So
Well, and I think for our listeners, they know my background in the fact that I grew up in an independent shop, and it has changed so much, not only over the 30 plus years I've been involved with my family shop, but just in like the last couple of years, the last 5 years, it just continues to just move at such a rapid rate that,
yeah,
I think it really kind of comes full circle to what our point of conversation is today, which is the adaptability. And it is so hard at times to kind of wrap your mind around the ever shifting technology and everything that you just talked about. I'm just thinking in the back of my head, my goodness, just in that short period of time, how much things have changed. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they have, and it's tricky, right? And this is where I think the biggest challenge is for shop owners is it's a lot to keep up with and understand. And then it's also, it's a lot to take on and to implement change. There's a lot of change management within shops, right? I mean, you and I have had this conversation, and,
Yeah.
and I think, look, the number one, for most shops, the number one challenge they have today is exactly what you're working on kind of day to day, right? Which is making sure that you can find and hire and grow and train and retain technicians, Number one challenge, right? I mean, I was looking at a study recently, that we need 60,000 over a 4 year period, 4 or 5 year period. We need 60,000 new technicians coming into the space, right? And that's a lot over 4 years. That's 15,000 a year, right? That's over 1,000 a month. Like, where are those, coming from? That's a big. So look, I think we're all trying to move the needle on that challenge and on that problem. But the biggest thing within our control is, how do we keep people? Like, how do we keep people within the industry? First off, how do we keep people continue to work in shops? And then how do we keep people in our own shops? Right. And so, and honestly, it might not seem like it because we're a technology company. We spend inordinate amount of time on that problem as well. Right. Because it's what matters to the shops. Yeah.
It really is. And I think one of my passions is that I want to see our best and brightest in the industry really speak highly of the fact that they're in our industry, right? And I think a lot of cases right now, that's not the case because of a perceived slight to technicians or however that might be. The one really cool part about the ever-changing technology is that we might start appealing to a different demographic that'll help us chip away at that 60,000, right? Like, I don't think there's one solution. And that's what we always talk about with WrenchWay is, there's not one thing you're going to do that's ultimately just going to flip the switch and this problem goes away. The fact is that we just don't have enough people. So how do we make the people that we have incredibly happy, make them incredibly efficient? Because every time we give away an hour, that is really, really hard to come back from, especially when you're short staffed. And so I think that's the cool part about technology and everything that you guys are doing in helping to drive, whether it's efficiency or more trust from the customer to the shop, which has been a long problem, right? We've had this problem for a long time where we're always trying to gain that trust of a customer and share with them, hey, we're not just making stuff up. We're actually, this is the stuff that we're going after. So I think the tools that we're all coming up with and that you guys in particular have come up with are helping that. I think there's so much opportunity for that technology to make the life of a technician easier, to also gain respect, which I know that's one of the number one issues we hear amongst technicians is that they just don't feel respected.
Right.
Walk me through that side of like, how does this technology or the changing technology help make a technician's life easier?
Yeah. Well, as we dig into that, let me take a quick step back, which is,
Sure.
Technicians, look, every shop owner thinks their shop is really unique and totally different. And every person in a certain type of job thinks, well, it's different for us. And the reality is that's not, right? Like, often everybody is unique, but small businesses tend to have more similarities and commonalities than you think. And whether it's one shop to another, excuse me, or if it's one business, to another, or one industry to another. So the same is true for workers. So I remember there's a study, I think it was Voice of the American Worker, and not surprisingly, when they say, like, what do you care the most about work? Pay. So over 60% of people said pay. About a third of people said job security. A bunch of people said, I want to enjoy my work, right? Then it kind of goes down. I want to enjoy my work. I want stability, and those type of things. So when I think about the shop and I think about why people tend to leave, and move for other jobs, it's because of pay, right? I mean, it's going to be fairly consistent. It's going to be because of pay. It's going to be related. So from a financial standpoint, I just don't know that I have the job security that I'm looking for because this shop is not doing as well as I want it to, right? And that makes me nervous, right? Same thing on pay. Like, if the shop isn't doing as well as it could be, you're probably underpaying, or maybe you're not able to get enough jobs done in a day or a week. So therefore you're not getting paid, assuming that's a big part of your pay structure. And if it's a frantic, chaotic environment, well, you know what? Guess what? I go home, I'm pissed off. I give a dirty look to my dog. I'm not happy when my kids run up to me anymore, like that kind of stuff. And that's the stuff that carries over. And that doesn't matter it doesn't matter if it's my job, your job, a technician, or a teacher or whatever the case is. It's all the same. So, so with that, let me go to your real question.
Yeah.
So by utilizing great technology, now this shouldn't be a surprise, but it is, it's a surprise that more people don't really take this to heart. When you use great technology, your shop is going to end up making more money, right? So again, I gave you a couple of examples, like a couple of silly examples, like if you're using a really good CRM or a customer relationship management tool, you're going to bring more of your customers back, but you're also going to bring a lot of your best customers back, right? The surface level is, hey, get me more customers in, right? But what's really important, and when I talk about earlier about like not just checking the box, but what's really important is get the customers in so you could do the kind of work that you want to be doing, right? The kind of work that your technicians find rewarding or they're good at, or most importantly is going to make everybody the most money. Because the more money the shop makes, the more secure everybody feels, the more money everybody else in the shop makes. Like, that's great. Or again, like if I'm a technician and I notice that we got a lot of vehicles sitting around, or I'm sitting around waiting, right? I'm waiting for approval on jobs, or I'm waiting to figure out what bay a vehicle is going to go in, or I can't get this vehicle out of the bay because I haven't been told, like those kind of things. That's where something like what I would call workflow makes it really easy, right? So if you're a technician and you're running up to the front desk a ton, or your service advisor is running in the back a lot, that's a problem, right? That's inefficiency. It's frazzled. It's hectic. You're stressing me out. Like, I'm not making as much money as I can. I don't feel like we really have our stuff together. And that stuff just wears on you, right? And then you talk to your buddy who works down the block, and she tells you that her shop is, all the things that you want in an environment. That's why you lose people a lot of times, right? That's a big part of it.
Yeah, you are absolutely spot on. This week's episode of Beyond the Wrench is brought to us by Jasper Engines and Transmissions. Okay, your customer's engine or transmission has failed, but now is not the time for them to trade their vehicle. Not without a working engine or transmission. Besides, would they have kept their vehicle another 3 to 5 years if their engine or transmission had not let them down? If you answered yes, then Jasper Engines and Transmissions is your choice to give your customer's vehicle new life and many thousands of miles of enjoyable driving performance. When considering the high cost of a new or newer used vehicle, there's a pretty good case to be made for replacing a drivetrain component that has failed or is delivering poor performance. Rather than trading their car, truck, van, or SUV, install a quality remanufactured Jasper product for less than your customer would have to invest in a new vehicle or a newer used vehicle. Check out their website at jasperengines.com to learn more about the money-saving value of Jasper. One thing I want to ask you about is there's a direct correlation to technology, but I think it's really important to understand maybe the psychology behind the inspection as a whole. And I'm gonna pick on inspection for a second because
Great.
I've had scenarios where I have a technician come up and I'm a huge believer in inspections, especially video inspections. I think they're a game changer for our industry and like going back to my prior point of building trust. But I once had a technician come up and say, you know what? I don't like that we're doing these inspections. I think we're ripping people off, and I don't think that we're doing what they asked us to do in the first place. And I said, right. I think you're looking at this through the wrong lens. Our job is like a doctor, right? We need to tell a client what's actually going on in their vehicle. And it's not, hey, we just want to sell you all these parts that you don't need. It's not that at all. It's truly giving them a health check of their vehicle so that they can make informed decisions, because if they don't do the maintenance, or if they don't, know that they're going to have this huge hit to their budget in a few months regardless, it's hard for them to plan. So I think to me, there's even like going beyond technology. It's the why you're using that technology in the first place is so critical.
Yeah. You know what? I think you're spot on. It's funny. I've heard lots of people, I've heard every objection possible to doing inspections and every reason. And look, and it's always the case that there is some reality and some truth in those things. But I think you took it and you sort of turned it on its side the perfect way, which is, look, selling people work they don't need, convincing people to buy things that they don't need. Yeah, that's not a great practice, right? No. Nobody feels great. Nobody would feel great about doing that. And nor should any of us do that. But educating people on what the risks are, boy, I mean, I'll tell you, if my shop did not tell me about all the things that were wrong with my car, and then I had a problem, I got stuck somewhere, I had an accident, or my daughter was driving my car, whatever the case is, that's when I would really feel like I was taken advantage of or not provided, great service. So look, it's a fine line. It's definitely a fine line between those things. Yeah, I think you're totally spot on. Well, and the other thing is, let's take that even another level, which is part of what you're doing is you're creating a record of all of the challenges, right? So again, this is where the sort of gradation between like a box checking feature or solution differs from one that is really going to make a difference, right? Where so if I do an inspection, take a bunch of pictures of stuff, and I am just kind of capturing in one place all the inspection items, and then I kind of put it out there, that's fine. But what you really want to do is you want to be able to go in and say, don't worry about this one right now. I just want you to know we found it. We'll talk about it when you come back 6 to 12 months from now, right?
Right.
Or that's like a green, right? Or like, hey, this thing's kind of an issue. If now's a good time, we should do it. But don't worry, if you don't do it now, I will send you an automated email or text message just saying, remember we talked about this 6 months ago? It's probably time, that you bring it in, right? Like that stuff's got to happen automatically. Because it's good for the end customer, and it's good for the shop, right? It's good business.
It is, and I always kind of use this analogy in like a real life situation that I would be very upset, right? Say you have a taillight out or a license plate light or something like that, and you go meet your friends for a drink after work, and you leave and you get pulled over because that license plate light is out. You're going to be pissed at the shop because that's the reason I'm bringing it in. And similar to if you go to the doctor and you're misdiagnosed, or you are maybe not told something that is very, very important to your health moving forward, you're not going to be happy. And so I think the more we can get that knowledge to technicians and know that, yes, we do need to be profitable. We do need to sell jobs, and we do need to make sure that we are working on our KPIs. We're trying to get the business or make sure that the business remains in a very healthy spot, because in order to pay you what I need to pay you, to give you what you need to be a happy employee, we have to be profitable, and being profitable as a shop is not a bad thing. Like, we have to be profitable to get to where we want to go, right? And I think that's some of the stuff that you business leaders that are out there, and that you have technicians to be able to bring them into the fold and explain the business case at some level, and make sure that they understand why you're doing what you're doing every day. Because if they don't have a true understanding of that, they're going to look at the, hey, your labor rate's $150 an hour. I'm getting paid $25 an hour. Where does the rest of that money go? And if they just don't understand, like, they're going to assume, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
Right. Well, it's interesting. Yeah. It's funny. I have a really strong reaction to part of what you just said in terms of, equating profitability with misleading or ripping off your customers. I find to be one of the most un-American things that a person could put forth, right? So don't get me wrong. Plenty of greed. There's plenty of ripping off, I'm sure, going on in every different industry, not just automotive, but in every industry. across the country. But the reality is that the most profitable businesses are generally the ones they're rewarded for providing a great service and being reliable and treating people the way they want to be treated, right? And it's the same thing. It's the same thing where you, as a technician, as any employee, you should get paid what you're worth, right? And you should be paid in part based on the value that you're helping to create. And if you are, if you're providing a great service and you're doing great work for clients and you're supporting the company and the entity, and you're a good teammate and all those kind of things, you should be paid at the top of your range, right? For your business. I mean, for the work that you're doing for your employer, which I think kind of gets back to what we're saying, right? Which there's no reason that everybody can't win in this thing, right? And a lot of times we do hear pushback. I'll talk to a shop owner and they'll tell me, I can't get the technician with the most experience, let's just say, in my shop. I don't know if my HR department's listening, but the technician with the most experience, boy, that guy or gal, they just don't want to do the inspections. It takes too much time, or it's too hard, or it's too this. And, the reality is, look, there is a learning curve to everything, and change can be hard for people, no doubt. But I don't know. I've also seen way too many examples of where shop owners will, or even technicians, if I'm at a conference or a convention, and they'll come up and say, oh yeah, this guy, he was my biggest detractor. He made my life heck, trying to get them to use inspections or trying to use workflow or really adopting all these tools. But now they tell me, I'm out of here if you ever get rid of this system, because I don't know how we could ever go back to that mayhem that we were running before. And they like that they're making more money and, all that kind of stuff.
Change is hard, right? I think change is hard for any of us. And especially if you are that really experienced technician that has been good at their job for a really, really long time. Now you're throwing this whole different kind of way I do my job at me. And I guess I'm curious to understand if you have any advice for shop leaders in terms of how you help that change happen. And
Yeah.
You're always going to probably fight some resistance, but how do you fight through that resistance to get your business in a better spot?
Yeah. Yeah. We spend so much time on this. I mean, one of the things that I'm most proud of at AutoVitals, and I think it's been like this since the beginning, is we don't view ourselves as like a technology product, right? We don't look at, we are a system, we're a solution in terms of every client has a dedicated client success advisor, and they're not support people, they're not account managers, they're advisors, because their job is to help impart best practices on our clients so that they can work with the people in their shop. So let me share a couple of the best practices that we talk about all the time. So one is, it's really important for you, the shop owner, to understand why you're doing it and to really internalize it, and then to spend your time helping them to understand, right? So I'll give you common pushbacks, and then how we sort of coach, so to speak, or advise our shop owners and managers to work with their people. Well, a digital inspection takes longer, right? Well, digital inspection takes longer than a crappy pencil whipped paper inspection that's going to sell 30% less work, and a lot more of the kind of not so profitable work that nobody really wants to be doing. Yes, I could debate you whether it takes longer or not, but let me just give that argument up and say, yeah, it'll take a little bit longer, but it may be 10% longer, but it's 100% better and more profitable. And that makes a big difference, right? So understanding those things. The other thing is to help people understand how they're doing through data, right? So again, it's one of the things I mentioned Uwe earlier. It's one of the things that he and we have continued to build out over the years, which is all of these like our business control panel and all these easy to understand, but really sort of powerful data and reporting that tells you, you know, are you really, who's really adopting the tools within the company and what the benefit is, right? Because it's easy to say, well, we did this number of digital inspections, or we use the workflow this number of times. But what really matters is, what did every single employee do, right? So how many times did Bob, you know, do the digital inspection versus Sue, versus, you know, Larry? And how many times did we edit the pictures? How many times did we actually send it out? How long did we wait until we called? You know, and again, I could go through that with all the different things. I could, as a manager, I can go to my people and say, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and the numbers aren't good enough, and I'm kind of, I could blow you off, and, you know, whatever the case is. But when I sit down and I have like a little town hall, or I have a team meeting, and we kind of walk through and say, okay, we all agreed to try, you know, this technology. Sue, you're doing great. You really adopted, you know, these, and these, and look at the great results you got the last 2 weeks. And Bob, you did some really good work over here. You missed a couple of things these days. You just kind of got out of it, or maybe forgot, and your numbers kind of dragged behind. Can we all agree, like, we're going to get behind it in the next, you know, couple of weeks? And then we come back in a couple of weeks, and then I show you the reports, and we're like, holy cow, like, things look really good. Everybody's adopting. We're all making some more money. Let's buy pizza for the, you know, for the shop. Whatever the case is. But it's not making it personal. There's no yelling. There's no belittling. We're just going through the data. You know, I'm just pointing out the data, right? And pointing out how it worked. Like, come on, let's go do it.
I think everybody likes that approach better. You know, I think the way that I grew up in a shop is much different than what it is today, right? Where it was a lot of screaming and yelling and a lot of tools being thrown. And I think there's still some element to where you see that in shops. But, you know, I think with good leaders and really making sure that we have good leaders in these shops, that's where it changes a lot, because it's not just, you know, rubbing their face in the problem. It's really sitting down and making sure that they get an understanding of why you're even tracking it in the first place. And the more you can get on the same page there, the less friction there's going to be when you're going through and talking to them about numbers. But that's still, you know, I think comes down to communication a lot of times. Right. And, you know, maybe you mentioned it, like, this is why we're making the switch to this technology. But if you just go out and say, hey, we're making the switch, you buy into it whether you like it or not, like, you're going to be facing an uphill battle forever. Right.
Well, and listen, running a business is about leadership, right? It doesn't matter. There's a lot of management parts of it, and then there's a bunch of leadership parts of it. And the management tends to be about the process and the numbers and things like that. And the leadership tends to be about the people. And, you know, you've got to, you can't fake it. You can work on it, and you can improve yourself, and you could have people and things and technology that support you, but you do also kind of have to genuinely care. Right? You have to genuinely want your people to succeed. And you have to genuinely want, you have to believe that your people should follow you. Right? If you're going to be a leader, like, one of the most important things about being a leader is you've got to believe that people have a reason to follow you. Otherwise, they're going to, you know, they're going to sniff that out right away. Right? They're going to sniff out that you're just kind of talking the talk, and you know, they got to know that you believe it. And which means you've got to have a little bit of conviction, which means sometimes you got to be able to stand up to folks and have tough conversations because you know you're right. Right? So if I'm a shop owner or a shop manager, and I'm debating with one of my my best techs, who's one of the most valuable, who maybe has been there a long time, is not, whatever the case ends up being. If I want them to do what I'm asking, I got to know, not only is it good for the shop, but it's good for them too, and I got to be able to convince them. Right? Yeah. So, you know, you gotta, but that takes a little bit of time. Like, it's hard to do that on your own. And again, that's where I talk about, like, advisors and enablement and reporting. And, you know, you need a partner who's going to really kind of support you on understanding why these things are important, and then how to explain them and position them, and then give you the tools so it's, like, really easy to kind of roll out. to people, right? The path of least resistance. Sometimes the path of least resistance is great, right? I mean, sometimes that's how life works out. It's easy is better. It's great. Like, let's not bang our heads. I say this to my people all the time. Like, let's not bang our heads against the wall needlessly. Just because it's harder, it doesn't mean it's better, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's harder, right? And that's what you do.
It's such good advice. Is your shop looking to fill open positions or grow your bench of candidates? Consider adding WrenchWay to your recruiting efforts. WrenchWay helps shops and dealerships all across the U.S. find better qualified candidates for their service centers. WrenchWay Top Shop memberships are only $150 per month and include unlimited job postings on the best job board in the industry, a guarantee of 10 qualified applicants, and the shops choose who is considered qualified, access to connect with and help over 650 high schools and post-secondary schools, and much more. Learn more about WrenchWay's Top Shop memberships by visiting WrenchWay.com and selecting the For Shops tab under the Solutions dropdown. Link is in the show notes. One of the things I'm interested, you work with a lot of shops, right? And I think being able to see different leadership styles, and as you talk about KPIs and numbers and managing through data, which I think is a very, very powerful thing, what do you see, and this is going to be a super vague question, so take it wherever you want, is what do you see out of the best shops and how they take that data and communicate it to their team and really use it to have an impact on their day-to-day business? Are there any themes or anything that you see amongst the best shops that are out there as to how they take these numbers and kind of put them into action?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one is to it's often very helpful to go through all the information in a group, right? So I'll tell you a couple of things. I'll actually back up. One trick that I've seen be really helpful is, as a shop owner, is to help, and a shop manager is to help yourself by recruiting somebody internally to be an internal sort of operational champion, right? It might be, I mean, if you're lucky, it's your best technician. But it might also be just a technician that other people look at and say, "Yep, that person does their job. They wear the company hat well, or the shop hat well." And same thing on service advisors and whatnot, right? So recruit somebody so that you've got at least one or two people who are going to go all in, right? So don't try to get everybody to go all in at once. Make sure you get at least one or two people to go all in with you in the first, let's just call it, month. They go to all the trainings, they use the tools, whatever you have to do to make that happen. The second thing is meet as a group, right? So have an organized meeting, have a breakfast, bring in coffee, bring in pizza, whatever the case ends up being. And go through the data as a group. Go through like, okay, we all agree that we're going to, do this thing and try it. And not surprisingly, it's fine. Some people really jumped in, some people haven't. It's going to be a learning experience. And then, look at the shops who do the best are the ones who can demonstrate to people. It's really two things. They can demonstrate to people like, hey, this is working. Let's do more of it. And here's how it's going to be better for you, right? That's an important piece of it, right? The shops who expect everybody to adopt and then they don't want to share the slightly bigger pie, that's okay. I mean, everybody's business is different, and that could work great. Maybe you're already paying your folks incredibly well and they have great benefits and all that kind of stuff, but it's usually nice for there to be a little something in it for them, right? Even if it's a one-time thing, like we're going to have a big reward at the end of the month, or you're going to get a bonus, or whatever it is, just to sort of solidify that.
One absolutely, the one piece that I pulled out of that I think is absolutely fantastic is that getting those champions, internal champions, to go along with you, because otherwise it can be an awfully tough road to hoe if you don't have that. And I think all of us in our businesses have, in sports, you hear the analogy like the glue guy or the glue girl, I guess, right. The one that kind of has the pulse of everybody, that everybody gets along with, that goes to vent when they're having a bad day. I feel like if you get somebody like that involved with you early, that helps so much because they're going to help calm the nerves of or the anxiety of others in the building in a way that as a business manager or leader you just can't do. Like you just don't maybe have that level of ability to be able to do that. Those people are super important in a business, just incredibly important.
Right. Well, because, as the quote unquote boss or the owner or whatnot, like, you like it or not, you are going to have at least a slightly different relationship than their peers are going to, right? So it's a lot more authentic when they can go to their peers and get that information. And then I think the other thing is, you've just, like I was saying before, the shop owners who do it the best are those who are, they see obstacles as opportunities. And they're just constantly they're used to working through obstacles, right? They don't throw their hands up, they don't say like, this is hard, right? They understand, like, look, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have made this work incredibly well for them, and the data doesn't lie, right? It may not be that easy today, but it's going to be 10 times better, a month from now or 6 months from now. And we're never going to get to our goals unless we kind of push through this stuff.
I think once you do that too, if you can kind of keep everybody in the loop as to the progress you see, right? And the one example I use is that with my family shop, it's kind of up and down at times. Like you'll have great weeks followed by a terrible week, followed by a great week. And it just kind of, at times, the ups and downs that go along with running a business. But if, say you implement a new type of technology and you have a baseline of different data points that you're pointing to and saying, okay, this is where we're starting. And then if you can start to show incremental improvement over time, and whether that's efficiency, productivity, whatever it might be, being able to show that visibility to them that, hey guys, this is working. Like we're doing the reason we did this is because we needed to help improve our business, and look, it's actually working. Like we're actually making strides, and not expecting that you're just going to implement a piece of software and overnight everything is going to change. Just show some incremental improvements and have them, communicate that to your team, because then hopefully that drives some positivity of, hey, this change that we made is moving us in the right direction.
Completely. Well, let me give you two examples of that. Like this is the kind of stuff that you should expect to get from technology, and it's really hard to get otherwise. Technician efficiency is a perfect example, right? So the number of hours that you're being paid versus the number of hours spent on the vehicle, right? And there's two ways of looking at that. You can look at that, the number of hours you're billing, and the number of hours that the technician is getting paid for working on the vehicle. Right. So that's technician efficiency. And then technician productivity, which is the number of hours spent on vehicles versus the number of, like in general, right? So the number of hours that they spend on vehicles versus the number of hours clocked in that you're paying them, for that. Those are numbers that you should have at your hands at all times. They move on a weekly, monthly, basis. And hopefully, if those are going up, then your profitability is going up. And hopefully your technician's pay is going up, right? And that's the kind of thing that, it's nice to be able to explain. Like somebody might, it's nice to be able to explain to your employees why things are going well. Like I think it's important to be able to say to them, hey, look, you got paid more this month, but let me tell you why, right? You had less downtime, or more of the hours that you spent on the vehicle, they got paid, or we got paid, or we had higher billings, or whatever the case is, right? It just reinforces, it makes it feel less arbitrary, right? And it makes them feel like they're part of the solution. Then they start thinking like, I wonder what it's going to be next week. I wonder what it's going to be the week after. How do we get it higher, right? Make them part of the solution in understanding what the problem is.
Oh, that's like super fuel if you take an idea that somebody in the shop came up with and you implement it and it starts to work.
Oh yeah.
I mean, then it's not just, hey, the boss is telling us we got to do this stuff. It's they're listening to me. We implemented something that we as technicians saw in the shop as a way to improve our workflow, or a way to improve something simple that has now led us to greater productivity. And once you do that, I mean, talk about starting a fire, right? Like you're just like, you start to get people looking for things. And I do think that's very motivating over and above money or anything. If you just listen to the techs,
Right.
and if they have good ideas, listen to them and implement them. I think people would be shocked at what they could get out of their technician teams.
Right. No, you know what? And I'm glad you brought that up, because that is actually one of the things that's really common amongst the shops that, I mean, A, we see in general as being most successful, and B, being really successful with technology is they have team meetings, they have discussions like this. Everybody feels safe and comfortable bringing their ideas to the table. And again, it's people are, they're either getting paid or their performance is going to end up being individual, but there's a nice trick in there too, right? Which is you can set team goals, but then you can also go through the data individually, or going through individual data. So what I mean by that is you can set a goal for all of your technicians or all your service advisors, right? So for example, you could say, look, we're trying to get our ARO up to this as a company, or as a shop, I should say. And let's look at the service. Let's look at the service advisors. What was ARO by advisor, or average billed hours per RO by advisor, right? Or something we call customer research time. Like how long did somebody spend looking at an end customer spend looking at the inspection? We can tell you that. And we know the longer they spend reading the inspection, the higher the ARO is going to be. It is money in the bank. But set a goal as a shop, but then go through everybody's data individually. And then what you have is, rather than as a shop owner having to sit on people who aren't doing what they're supposed to, the bunch of people in the shop who are excited, they start sitting on everybody else and they're like, come on, like just do this. It's easier. And we got this thing riding on it as an entire shop, or all of our bonuses, or, whatever the case is. So there's a little bit of peer pressure, but it could be fun. And it's the kind of thing that, done right, it'll improve the morale in the shop, not make it,
Yes.
Tougher or negative or anything like that.
Could not agree more. I think that the resistance a lot of times, I feel like, comes in how you approach it to start off with. And if your message is trying to drive it down somebody's throat that doesn't really want to buy in, you're going to really struggle with that. But if you can explain and talk them through the decision-making process, you can talk to them, even say non-technology driven, right? Like just a general process change in the shop. If you're fighting against your entire team to put a process through, it's just never going to take hold. But getting that buy-in is so important, and it has to make sense. And obviously, you're just not going to take everything that everybody says and implement it. So maybe even taking it a step further and talking them through your decision-making process and how you come to conclusions on things. To me, it just seems so simple that if you put yourself back into the employee's shoes, we've all been employees at some point over the course of our life. Like, how did it feel in certain scenarios where somebody didn't communicate to you properly or tell you why you're doing something? Like, it didn't feel the greatest. So, like, just kind of put yourself on the other side of that, and I think you can make some major changes within yourself and your leadership style to help you adapt.
Right. Listen, and it's hard. We all have these days and these weeks, right, where we're so busy or we're swamped and we're just not being our best selves in terms of leadership, management, peers, whatever it ends up being. It happens. The trick is to kind of catch yourself and make it so that's a minority of the time, right? The respect thing and the communication thing, it not only kind of goes up and down, but it also goes laterally, right? And I think, going back to discussions we were having around, like, how do you use technology to really improve a technician's work experience so that they not only want to stay working for you, they recruit friends and, they do their best work. Like, internal communication and communication even with clients is really important, right? So, frustration, bad communication internally is service advisor running into the back and being like, hey, what the hell's going on? Where is this? Or I haven't gotten an update, or vice versa, right? Like, hey, how do I get the vehicle out of off of lift 3? Or, where's the part, or where's the, this? So, technology can facilitate all of that. So you got, internal chat, or you've got chat that would go out to a customer, or rather than me sitting all the way in the back waiting for like, gee, what should I be working on next, or what does my next 3 hours look like, or when can I take a break? All that should be laid out for you through technology. Like that should come through to you on your tablet. I'm a technician. I should have a tablet. Tell me what I'm working on next. Move the vehicle here. Do this, so that when I do go up to the front, or I do see the service advisor, we can have a nice little chat. We talk a little bit about what we think is going on with the Super Bowl. How excited we are to, find out if Taylor Swift makes it there from Tokyo, which obviously is a big deal to most people.
Huge deal.
Huge deal. So that's the kind of stuff you want people to do. Or they can have a nice chat when they're sitting in the team meeting and going through all the successes and things we got to work on and stuff like that. Right. So it can really calm the chaos with technology.
So let's dive into that a little bit deeper. I know in reading through some of the AutoVitals stuff, we talk about workflow management. And I think a lot of times when you say workflow, you kind of have this visual in your head as to what that means. But talk to us a little bit about what technology means to workflow and really how it helps us get more efficient or just how it makes our workflow better.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because, look, DVI, when I got here 4 years ago, a lot of our challenge was convincing people they needed to know what to use DVI. And now it's, we need DVI.
Pretty obvious.
But we're not going to know where we're going to get it, or maybe I get it and I'm not sure how to implement it, like that kind of stuff. But I will tell you, workflow is by far the most impactful and sort of unique piece. Like the shops that are most successful that I interface with and I see, yes, they use DVI. Yes, they have a great website. They do all those type of things. They really understand the workflow and they really build a process around it, right? So the way to think about workflow is at the heart of it is it's a board that, and you can look at it two ways. You can either look at it as through the technician view. So you see what technician's working on what in what order, or so every sort of column, if you imagine a grid, and every column maybe is a technician and then every tile is a vehicle, or it's more of like what's called a Kanban board where it's every column is a stage, like appointment for today, or waiting for vehicle, or dropped off, or in inspection, or waiting for part, whatever it ends up being, waiting for pickup. And the difference is you can get some of that in your point of sale or in your shop management system. But there's all the nuances and the details in there, right? There's all the things that you can set up on every tile that communicates. I mean, you look at it and you're like, wow, that's a lot of information. But if you've been using it for 2 or 3 months, you realize that little red number means how long the vehicle's been sitting there, or that little question mark means that a question came in from the customer, or whatever the case ends up being. And what's beautiful about it is, again, if I'm a technician, I sit there, I've got my tablet, I've got my own view, and it just tells me like, okay, here's the work that we want you to do and in what order, right? And as soon as something changes, it changes on your tablet. Nobody's got to come back and tell you anything. Nobody's got to run back. Every time you're working on something, you have a question, you throw it in your tablet, you ask a question, it goes up to the service advisor, the answer comes right back, right? So used properly, it will increase the capacity that you can get done in the shop by, it should be 20%. You should be able to get 20% more hours and jobs done if you're really using the workflow. And again, it's one of those things, like it takes a little time to get used to, and you're like, I don't know what this thing means. It's the one thing that like you can't convince shops and shop owners, but then also technicians to give it up. You did not want to go back to where you were beforehand. And it ties in, and the other thing that's important is it ties right in with the inspection tools, right? So that's the important part, or it ties in with the CRM, sending out messages to customers, or it ties into all the reporting. Like you kind of need that whole solution all working together. Otherwise, you've got like some inspection information over here and your CRM information over here, and then you've got your web stuff, and it just becomes, like I said, really chaotic and expensive.
It does.
Look, I get this question all the time. I get a question all the time, which is, as a shop and as a shop owner and as an employee, when do I get a one-stop shop piece of software? When do I get a piece of software that does it all together? I'll tell you, it's at least 3 to 5 years out, right? The best you're going to get today is you're going to get a two-stop shop. You got to have a great shop management system. Again, like I said, orders and inventories the parts, ties into labor guides, writes out the invoices, get your people paid, all that. And then you need the shop success solution, which is going to really help you grow and be a ton more profitable and retain your people, and help pay them a ton more. So, and you know what? The systems all integrate nicely. And you got 2 people to deal with and save money that way. But you get a full solution on everything you need to really run your shop. So
I think that's a totally fair answer too. No, I think it's a fair answer. I think we've, even with the integration, seen just a lot smoother process than, again, even 5 years ago. It just, things seem to play together better today than they used to. And I do, when we talk about workflow, we talk about digital inspections. I do think what you guys do at AutoVitals is so important, and pushing the envelope even initially with the inspections. I do remember going through that and how foreign of a concept that was. And like you said, it's gotten to the point now to where if you're not doing them, you're behind. You're just not a current day shop. It is funny over the years to see that progression, and going from people fighting against it to now just being like, well, that was obvious.
Right. Well, and I think the good news is, and what we find, I'll tell you where we get a ton of business, honestly, is, someone will say, we'll call a shop and we'll say, do you use DVI, or do you have anything that looks like workflow or CRM? And they'll say, oh, I do some of it in our point of sale. And we get excited when we hear that, because what it means is, okay, you're really interested in technology, but you've probably only scratched the surface, right? So, a point of sale DVI, it's typically going to be really basic and really, rudimentary, but it's something. And it shows that you're excited about technology. You see the value that can be created. And then we go in and show what a real solution on that side looks like. And it ends up being, kind of a nice win. Again, I've said to a ton of folks, I could go out and add, we could add tying into labor guides, or we could, tie into parts ordering, and call ourselves a point of sale. But if I was being honest with you, I wouldn't recommend you run your shop on it. And I think that's kind of where, going back to the one-stop shop, two-stop shop, I think that's kind of where most of these things sit today, right? Which is, man, there is so much great functionality and capability in the shop management systems, and there's so much great capability in systems like ours for shop success solutions. And, I think that's what happens. So.
One last question as it relates to workflow. And again, I'm going to lean on your experience of seeing all kinds of different shops. Is there any common, and you kind of already answered this, but I just want to maybe ask again, any low-hanging fruit for those shops that are out there that might struggle with workflow, or might struggle with something that you could offer a piece of advice on, hey, I could go back in my shop today, change this little, make a tweak to this little thing and have an improvement. Is there anything out there that you see pretty commonly that you're like, okay, we just fix this one thing first and then we can move on to the rest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to give a catch-all answer, which is, some folks either don't realize or are just busy and don't take advantage of the fact that I can only comment for us, so I'll do that, which is, if you've got a dedicated expert who is committed to helping you learn something about your business in 10 minutes, and because the challenge is that if there are opportunities like that within a shop, they usually vary. There's usually not one simple sort of catch-all, like do this thing. Like, I can tell you, use this custom feature to be able to communicate internally, or really turn on and use the internal chat. It's just different at every shop, like every shop, but there usually is one or two things. But I think you hit it on the head, which is start small, right? Like ask your advisor, send your advisor an email or call them or whatever. Or if you don't know who that is, reach out to me or Lauren. Just say, you know what? I want to spend 15 minutes this week improving how we use workflow. What are your 2 tips? I guarantee you within an hour, a couple hours, you'll get a response back that will be very actionable and very easy, right? That's usually the biggest thing. Like usually the biggest thing is I love when coaches use this phrase, which is to step back and work on your business and not in your business. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, right? About leadership and whatnot, which is we all get really distracted and we all spend too much time working on stuff that we shouldn't be working on. But is it 80% of your time or is it 20% of your time, right? Nobody's zero, as far as I can tell. So, but you got to limit it. And that's the same thing, like stepping back and asking somebody like, hey, give me a tip to help me. Like, what's the one thing that you think we could do in our shop? The 2 things, like, and make it actionable and follow through on it. Like, I think that's the trick.
Could not agree more. I tell people that when they're interacting with somebody in WrenchWay, ask that same question, right? Like, just, is there advice that you have for us? Is there, are people, as yours do, talk to a lot of shops each and every day? You see the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think being able to see a whole wide range of shops helps you understand what the good ones do, maybe what the ones that are struggling do, and, maybe be able to have a solution for you. And we could probably have a whole other discussion on technologies that we've built that when you build technology, you think that everybody's going to use every piece of your technology, and then as you do it, as you get further and further into it, you're like, that it's not one thing for everybody. It is based on what is bringing value to their shop, and it's hard to come to terms with that at some level.
Right. Yeah. Completely agree. Great.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I love what AutoVitals is doing. I love what you're doing, Jon. And it was such a fun kind of high energy conversation. Those are the ones that I appreciate the most and really have a lot of fun with. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And we hope that you'll join us again at some point.
Yeah, 100%. And Jay, thank you. Most importantly, I want to thank you for all the important work that you're doing with technicians who really are the heart and soul of the industry. It's hard. It's hard hiring folks. It's hard retaining them. It's hard finding them. And I think the work that you're doing, connecting technicians, with great jobs and helping them find the right place to work for them. And then, helping shops, find technicians, and then also just trying to grow the pot bigger. We share your passion for it. But you are really right on the front lines, and, we appreciate that. So yeah. And I look forward to coming back. Absolutely. It'd be great.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate everything. Right. And Jon, where can people find you at? Just out at the AutoVitals website, or where would you to send them?
AutoVitals.com, or if you wanted to email me, you can email me at jon.belmonte@autovitals.com. And love to hear from folks, and love feedback and ideas and all that kind of stuff. And then you can also find us on Facebook. The Digital Shop Talk Forum. So we've got a really active Facebook forum and love seeing people out there. So,
well, appreciate it. Again, thank you for everything.
Great. Thanks, Jay. I'll talk soon. Bye.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.